loves, let's talk about the scariest thing that can happen to a single woman who's out here trying to date and trying to find her future husband. That is being ghosted. So, if this is your first time watching me, my name is Keisha Rice, and single millennial Christian women come to me when they have everything else. They have the great education, they have the job, they have the great friends, but they're still looking for that perfect partner. So, back to being ghosted. It is the absolute worst. I don't think that there's anything worse that someone can do to another person. I mean, there are, but it definitely is one of the worst things you can emotionally do to someone. And it's also just immature and it's just wrong. So oftentimes I have women come to me, whether this is a client that I'm working with, or I get the messages in my DMs and I get my emails, and they go along the lines of this. Hey, I went out with this guy. It was a great date. I had a good time, but he's never called me back since. What happened? Or even worse, I went out with this guy a few times. Everything was great. Maybe we were even friends beforehand and we had sex, and now everything is different and he's not returning my calls. So, this again is a terrible thing to do to someone, and it can leave a person feeling incredibly hurt and just wanting answers, really. So, unfortunately, I can't tell you why other people ghost. That's something that maybe someone will later on have a change of heart and give you an answer to. But I can go into some of the reasons why maybe you're getting ghosted. And I wanted to give you 4 of those reasons. Number 1, do you have boundaries? Because boundaries are a very vital part of being the type of woman who attracts a great quality relationship. When you don't have boundaries, you will accept anything and you will go on dates with anyone, including people who will treat you like trash, frankly. It is so important that you get very clear on the type of man that you want to be with and that you set those boundaries, that you won't date someone who shows this type of behavior. And it's important that you get a little pickier on who you go out with. So number 2 goes into number 1. Do you actually hold to those boundaries? Do you enforce those boundaries? Because here's the thing, if you're not enforcing boundaries that you've set, or if you don't have them to begin with, people will walk all over you. And that allows you to get abused, which is one way that ghosting happens, that a man will meet you and go out with you, and once he gets what he wants, he'll just walk out the door because you have no boundaries. You haven't established that, hey, I don't sleep with someone until this criteria has been met. Hey, I don't allow people to just come in and walk all over me, as in, I don't just answer the phone the second that you call. I don't just respond to your text messages the second that you text me. And I definitely don't do the, hey, what are you doing text at 2 a.m. You have to set those boundaries and you have to enforce them. Because if not, you put yourself in a position in which you are easily abused, and that can lead to you being ghosted. So, number 3, do you have desperation or neediness? Because that is another thing that often leads to women being ghosted, is that they start to get in a relationship with a man and he starts to feel like she's becoming really desperate and clingy and wanting to spend every second with him. And some men get frightened by that. And because that man gets frightened by that, then he will end up ghosting the woman and just disappearing. And yes, ghosting is a terrible thing to do. And yes, if that is the case, a man should be man enough to be truthful, to be honest, to have that conversation. But there are men who are afraid. There are men who are a little bit cowardly, or they haven't matured enough to be able to have those conversations. So they end up ghosting instead. So make sure that you check yourself. Make sure that when you're going on dates, that you are not coming from a place of desperation or neediness. Make sure that you are doing the work to cultivate a life of your own. and that you are doing the work to be that type of woman who has her own thing going, regardless of what the man in her life is doing. So, the final thing for being ghosted is, do you have anything else to offer? Now, in this case, I am talking specifically to women who say that they slept with a man and then he just off and left. Do you have anything else to offer besides your body? Because it is important that if you want to attract a high quality relationship, that going back to point number 3 about not being desperate, part of that not being desperate is having your own thing going and having more of a personality and also just having more interests and passions. That is one of the main things that makes you attractive to another person, is when that person can see that you have your own hobbies, that that person can see that there are things that you are so passionate about, because that passion is incredibly attractive, by the way. When that person can see that you're not going to have to spend, every single second of the day with them, that you have your own things going as well. It is really important that you have a life and that you have things going for yourself besides having a pretty face and having a great body. It's important that you have a developed mind as well. It's important that you've had great life experiences, because when you have those things, men are more likely to stick around and see what else they can learn from you, what else they can experience with you, and all the other things that make you such a great woman. So again, these are 4 of the things that you need to keep in mind when you've been ghosted. And yes, I know regardless of whether or not any of these things are true for you, that ghosting is a terrible thing. But we can't control other people's behavior. We can control our own behavior and our own actions and what we do to make sure that we're not setting ourselves up for hurt the next time.